"If my brother dies, I'll step over him and continue the battle." That's a quote from one of the very few leaders who stood up to America. And not just that, he actually managed to defeat it. Even though he could have lived a quiet life in the shadows, he chose to confront American arrogance without missiles, without bombs, and without terrorist groups. Just one speech from him could ignite the passion of millions and cause America to bleed. And even though many individuals managed to stand up to America alone, without armies and without nuclear weapons, they still became extremely famous, unlike this one particular figure, like Fidel Castro, who survived hundreds of assassination attempts, and Osama Bin Laden, who reached the heart of New York, and Saddam Hussein, who openly challenged America. If you want to know which figure we're talking about, you have to watch today's video. Imagine waking up in the morning, turning on the TV, and seeing America on fire. Not in Iraq, not in Afghanistan, but inside New York itself. Osama bin Laden was born in 1957 in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He was the son of a very wealthy Saudi businessman. After the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in late 1979, bin Laden began funding Islamic fighters against the Soviets. In 1988, after the Soviet forces were defeated and withdrew from Afghanistan, bin Laden decided to establish Al-Qaeda to continue the jihad, but this time against the United States, the same country that had supported him in Afghanistan. Bin Laden established training camps in Afghanistan, funded fighters with money and weapons, and the organization began launching attacks and bombings in different countries to strengthen its presence. After focusing his operations in the early 1990s in Sudan and Somalia, he started planning to strike the West. On February 26, 1993, bin Laden planned his first attack on New York, targeting the World Trade Center with a truck bomb. The plan failed to bring down the towers, but 6 people were killed and more than 1,000 were injured. In 1998, Al-Qaeda operatives successfully bombed the U.S. embassies in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and in Nairobi, Kenya. These attacks led to the deaths of over 200 people, including American embassy staff. Osama bin Laden was linked to the attacks, and he faced multiple charges for his role in the bombings. Even though many Al-Qaeda members were arrested, bin Laden continued to run all operations from abroad. Let me tell you, the U.S. created a special counterterrorism unit in 1999 specifically because of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and his name was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. But during all that time, Osama bin Laden was still thinking about how to cause the greatest damage to the United States. And that's exactly what he did in 2001, specifically in the events of 9/11. Al-Qaeda operatives successfully hijacked 4 passenger planes in the eastern United States. 2 of them crashed into the World Trade Center towers in New York. The 3rd plane hit the Pentagon building in Virginia. And the 4th plane crashed in a rural field after resistance from the passengers. And all of that was planned by Osama bin Laden, who admitted to orchestrating the attacks. The United States changed many of its policies and made major reforms within the FBI to prevent future terrorist attacks. In October 2001, bin Laden was added to the newly updated list of wanted terrorists, and the U.S., along with other countries, launched military operations in Afghanistan to capture him, but he managed to escape. In August 2010, the CIA received intelligence about Osama bin Laden's location in Pakistan, and in May 2011, under the orders of President Barack Obama, a U.S. Special Operations Unit launched a mission, located bin Laden's hideout, and killed him. And even though the United States succeeded in eliminating Osama bin Laden, he had already caused massive damage and managed to evade them for more than 18 years. Despite his death, Al-Qaeda remained active, and several other terrorist organizations emerged afterward, like ISIS. Some people, when they remember the end of Saddam Hussein, his execution by hanging broadcast live, might say he was a weak leader and that America took him down easily. But the truth is very different. Saddam Hussein wasn't just the president of an Arab country, he was a highly skilled political player who knew how to navigate between the powers of the East and the West. In the 1980s, Saddam convinced the United States of his cause, and America saw him as a strong ally against Iran after the Islamic Revolution. That's why Saddam Hussein entered a fierce war against Khomeini and Iran, which lasted for 8 years, all with support from the US, whether through weapons or intelligence. But after the war, Saddam Hussein decided to show America his other face, the one of a dominant regional leader trying to create an independent Arab project. He began attacking US policies that controlled the Gulf region and challenged America by invading Kuwait in 1990 to take control of Arab oil trade. That's when the US decided to step in, not to save Kuwait, but because Saddam had broken their game in the Gulf in front of the entire world. The United States launched Operation Desert Storm, and in just a few days, American forces hit Iraq with full power. But despite all that, Saddam didn't fall. He withdrew from Kuwait, but he remained in power. And once again, he returned to challenge America, constantly attacking it in his speeches. America couldn't handle Saddam Hussein and his famous defiant tone. That's why they decided to impose a blockade on Iraq and starve the Iraqi people, hoping they would rise up against President Saddam Hussein. But all of it ended up being failed attempts. Saddam Hussein was the one who started Iraq's nuclear program and built ballistic missile factories to become the #1 power in the Middle East. The US, under George W. Bush, decided to eliminate the threat once and for all. In 2003, America began spreading lies about Iraq and Saddam Hussein, claiming he possessed weapons of mass destruction and supported al-Qaeda. All of this was part of America's attempt to erase Saddam's image from Arab culture. After that, America invaded Iraq and brought down Baghdad. But Saddam Hussein? He disappeared. Yet the Iraqi resistance kept going, and Saddam was the one leading it from his hideout. But after a few months, the United States succeeded in capturing him in an underground hideout. He was put on trial and eventually executed. And if you think America won because of that, the truth is, America lost its image in front of the whole world. After investigations proved that Iraq didn't possess any weapons of mass destruction and that it was just an American excuse to invade the Middle East, that's what later turned Saddam Hussein into a simple Fidel Castro. And from the Middle East to North America, we move to the man, the revolutionary leader, who America dreamed every single day of eliminating, Fidel Castro. He was born in August 1926 and studied law at the University of Havana. After graduating, he worked as a lawyer in a small office. He was one of the first rebels to rise up against the Cuban president Fulgencio Batista, who was receiving support from the United States. Castro formed a fighting group and began attacking military camps until he was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison. In 1955, he was released and exiled to Mexico. He returned in 1959 and led a popular revolution in Cuba against the dictator Batista. But this time, Castro succeeded in his revolution and entered the capital Havana victorious, leaving the West in complete shock. A bold, young communist revolutionary taking power in Cuba, and from his very first days, declaring that he would not follow America. At a time when almost every country in North and South America was under the control of the White House, Castro refused to bow down. He began nationalizing American companies and expelled the military advisors. Then he started moving closer to America's #1 enemy, the Soviet Union. And within just 1 year, chaos had erupted. America tried to overthrow him through an internal revolution. The CIA carried out a well-known operation called the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, training a group of Cuban exiles to invade Cuba and overthrow the government. But the American plan failed, and Castro appeared in front of the cameras declaring victory, becoming a popular hero not just in Cuba, but across both continents. Castro didn't stop there. In 1962, he decided to deliver a major blow to the United States. He allowed the Soviet Union to place its ballistic missiles on Cuban soil aimed directly at America. This led to the infamous Cuban Missile Crisis. The US began inspecting ships heading to Cuba and constantly felt under threat, especially after Castro sent a message to the Soviet Union encouraging them to launch nuclear missiles at the United States from inside Cuba itself. America got scared and decided to negotiate with the Soviet Union, but Castro was ready to sacrifice his life just to break American arrogance. In that moment, the US realized that an enemy doesn't have to be an army or a great power. It could be just one man who refuses to back down. And that's why a series of assassination attempts began. It's said that the CIA planned more than 600 assassination attempts against Castro, from poisoning his cigar to trying to blow him up, and even once sending him a diving suit laced with toxic chemicals. And beyond the rumors, the CIA itself admitted to 8 assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, all ordered by US presidents themselves. But despite all that, Castro remained standing. And not only that, he continued to lead Cuba until he died in 2008. That means 10 American presidents came and went, and he was still in power, lighting the same premium Cuban cigar. And despite the economic blockade that America imposed on Cuba for over 60 years, the country never collapsed, whether under his rule or under his brother who took over afterward. Castro never fired a missile at America, never blew up a plane, never declared war, yet he remained a constant nightmare in the mind of the United States. All the previous figures were people who stood up to America. Some were captured, some were assassinated, and some managed to resist. But this man, the one you've been waiting to hear about, actually succeeded in defeating the United States. He wasn't just an enemy, he was the first person to force America to run from the battlefield. That man is Ho Chi Minh, the leader of Vietnam, a name that entered history through the widest gates. He redefined the meaning of war and proved to the entire world that America can be defeated. He was born in May 1890, and he was a well-educated, cultured man. He spent years working in Europe, where he became deeply attached to communism and socialism. He returned to his country while it was under French occupation, and he had one goal: to liberate his land from colonial rule. Ho Chi Minh became the leader of the resistance against the French, and even after Vietnam declared independence from France, French forces remained in the country, but they entered into a war against Ho Chi Minh and the Vietnamese army, until he finally succeeded in 1954, defeating the French army in the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, forcing them to withdraw from Vietnam after suffering massive losses. At that time, Vietnam was divided into 2 parts: Communist North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh, and capitalist South Vietnam, supported by the United States. Ho Chi Minh wanted to unify Vietnam, so he began the war against South Vietnam and the real power behind them. The war started in the early 1960s. America entered with full force, and the world was expecting a quick American victory in Vietnam. But Ho Chi Minh was fighting with a completely different strategy: guerrilla warfare, slow, grinding exhaustion. He moved the battles into the jungles and hills, far from the cities. American soldiers were living in nightmares, unable to locate the Vietnamese fighters. The fear of the Vietnam War reached America itself. Families didn't want to send their sons to war. Young men were tearing up their draft cards and refusing to take part. All of that, and Ho Chi Minh didn't have nuclear weapons, fighter jets, or advanced technology. He motivated his soldiers with powerful speeches and made them ready to die for Vietnam. He told the Americans, "You can kill 10 of us for every one of you, but even so, we will defeat you and win." And that's exactly what happened in 1975, after the United States withdrew from Vietnam. But Ho Chi Minh didn't live to witness the victory. He passed away in 1969. After the victory and the withdrawal of the United States, the Communists liberated the city of Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, and renamed it after the late leader, Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh remained a symbol of resilience and resistance in Vietnam because he defeated 3 great powers and liberated his country 3 times. And most importantly, he humiliated the United States in front of the entire world. And with that, we've reached the end of our story.